John Mark Comer is someone that we've used at Hope before. His most popular book, I think probably for most people, is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. We've done that at Hope before, and we've also, Hope has done an entire kind of group study on his book Practicing the Way, which is the name of the nonprofit that was built off of his church to start a lot of adult discipleship materials like this. And for so many of their different studies, including all of their different Practicing the Way practices, they just give them away for free to churches. And so John Mark Comer has a heart for the church, is actively involved in some of those communities, and we're grateful that we get to benefit from those. And so he's a guy that lives on the West Coast, but don't hold that against him. He does a lot of great work on how to live well, and this book is from a few years ago, but was re-released within the last year or so. The book's subtitle is Work, Rest, and the Art of Being Human. In the beginning, John Mark says that it's about working, resting, and living a full existence. And if you say, Chris, that's not something I want, I don't want to live a full existence, I'll either tell you you're a liar or suggest a therapist to you, because that's something that we all want, right? We want to obviously have meaningful work, we want to rest, and we want to lead a meaningful existence, this life that God has given us. And I thought it would be a great companion to this Lenten season, much like the New Year. Lent is focused on self-improvement in some way. This isn't inherently called for in Scripture, at least not in this kind of practical way. There's no part of the Bible that says, thou shalt not drink Diet Coke during the month of Lent, or during the 40 days of Lent, or whatever that happens to be. But it's not inherently a bad thing to look to grow during this Lenten season, and it is about preparing our hearts for Easter and to celebrate the truth that Easter highlights for us about the goodness and grace of God. Also, in case you didn't know, the fun fact around Lent, we always talk about how it's 40 days, but if you count to Easter, it's actually more than 40 days. So you're like, what is happening here? Each Sunday doesn't count in the season of Lent. Each Sunday is meant to be a mini Easter. And so if you're giving up something for Lent, you can have it on Sunday. I'm just kidding. I think that's how that works, right? In Garden City, John Mark does this task of talking about how to live a full existence by breaking it down into a few key areas. Those areas are also how we're going to break down our teaching series for the next several weeks, and the way that it starts is really telling. The beginning of the book, the section that takes up the most real estate in the entire thing, is all about work. Is that because work is the most important? No. But it is where we spend a ton of time and energy compared to the rest of our modern life. And also, John Mark says, work does matter. The things that we do matter. Comer makes the point that we often say it doesn't matter, what you do. It just matters kind of who you are, or how you do it. And there's a lot of truth to that. But one of the things that Comer says is that it does matter what we choose to do with our lives. Of course it does. And because it's important, it's something that we can invest our interests and passions in. A lot of people think that work is just the product of the fall of man, right? Of course, we were just chilling in paradise, but then sin was introduced and work was created, right? God says that we're forced to toil, right? Now, there's the line all about how we will be forced to toil and work the soil, and it will be hard. We go, okay, that's where work was introduced. Our author points out this is actually not the case at all. Indeed, we see a model from work coming right from the very beginning, starting with creation. When God is in the process of creating in Genesis 1, and that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time here this morning, the Bible talks about at the end of the day, whatever a day is before the sun is created, at the end of each one of these days, God notices, takes time to reflect on how good the things were that he made, right? God works for a day doing the creation, and then sits back and goes, what I've made is good. Genesis shows God delighting in his work. Is that because God is doing one specific type of work that's better than all the others? Actually, quite the opposite. And this becomes even more apparent the more that we know about our wonderfully complex natural world, that within the context of creation, we see all of the things that God had to get just right in order for life to even work on this planet, right? God is, within the context of creation, God is an artisan, a designer, an engineer, an ecologist, a builder, amongst many other things. God is demonstrating from the very beginning that all of these different types of work are important. The scientific exactitudes necessary to make Earth a livable planet is insane. If it's tilted even just a little bit more, all life on the planet is obliterated. We're not, there technically in space there is no up, right? But my point is that the Earth is tilted on its axis ever so slightly, and that is one of the millions of things that allows life to exist, God's scientific exactitude. But then if you have ever seen the majesty of so many things around the world, in the natural world, you see the Grand Canyon, you see redwood trees, you see all these things. Man, so beautiful. God is also an artist, and all of these different things that God needed to do to make creation exist, all types of work are important. Contrast this with other stories that were popular at the time, and you see that the God we're worshiping is much different than the stories people were telling about their false gods. Richard likes to talk about this one, so John Mark Comer and Richard are on the same page. Good for John Mark Comer. It's always good to be on the same page as Pastor Richard. Pastor Richard likes to talk about the story of Marduk, which is a very popular god back in the day. And the thing that happened is that Marduk didn't want to work. And so part of the things that happened were that people were created to work for Marduk. Why? Because nobody wants to work. He's a god, so he created things to work for him, because who wants to work? That kind of work is for people, the slaves of the gods. Work was beneath the gods. And we're just using him as an example, but that is a very popular narrative amongst many different deities of the time. But when you hear that attitude kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? We see that it's a very different thing with our God. I just put the 4 letters of God's name. Side note, God's name is just breathing sounds. We say Yahweh, but that's just the best we can do. But Yo-he-va-he is all just breathing sounds. So our God, instead, delights in work. And we're going to talk about how God invites people to become co-creators. But when we look at these very contrasting ideas about the idea of work, our attitude kind of looks like one more than the other. And that is not exactly the right one, right? How many of us view work through the lens of a false god rather than the lens of the God that we worship? How many of us are like, I'm working for the weekend, or, that old necessary evil, we're going to push the rock up the hill another, day and get after it. Which, listen, I get that feeling. Anybody has that has to get up and go to work and all of that. I'm not saying that there can't be any of the feeling of being tired or any of those types of things. I am saying at our core, when we integrate our work with our faith, it's important to note what our God says and demonstrates about work. How many of us have a little bit of a different opinion? We all do at some point or another. Fortunately, there's a lot more about us and work in the creation story. When people are made, we are made for a specific reason. A lot of times I find myself saying, when we talk about Hebrew, we're like, it's a language, that's a lot more vague than you might expect, or it's more flexible, or it might mean something different. But this is one of the rare examples that Hebrew is incredibly clear here in the creation. Humans are created for a specific role within the context of all of this creation. There's a couple of Hebrew words that are used here. It says that we are made in the image of God, is usually how it's translated. And we're used to hearing that phrase, oh, you're made in the image of God. But it's like a super weird phrase. Like, we've heard it so long that maybe we've glossed over it. But what does that exactly mean, to be made in the image of an incomprehensible, in full God? An eternal, infinite God. The word that's used here for image is a word tselem. There it is, and that's how it looks in Hebrew. A tselem was a statue or an idol. This is a thing that people were aware of back in the day. There were tselems everywhere in different, worshiping different gods, but as well as sometimes royalty. You would put a tselem, a physical depiction of that god or ruler, in temples and around the community for that thing to be in the physical world. See what I'm saying? It was a physical representation of the thing that was the most important. That whatever was ruling, whatever was in charge, the tselems were the thing that showed that in the world around them. You can see what Genesis is saying then, is that we are made to be the thing that takes up space in this world that represents the God that we worship, the God that made us, the God that is in charge. And I think that it's really important that the Bible is saying here is that people were made amongst all of the cool things. Like I said earlier, redwood trees and falcons and grizzly bears and mountains and the Grand Canyon, for goodness sake. Everything that God made, humans are made to be the thing that represents God in the world, distinct amongst all creation. Amongst this depiction, there's this royal sense of humanity's role in the world. Connected to that particular word, there's the other word, radah. It always drives me crazy when people are like, hey, everybody, repeat this phrase. But it's kind of fun to say. Everybody say radah. Yes, and it means and a lot of times in translations it talks about having dominion over, and you're like, yeah, that feels good. Do we know what that means? Having dominion? No, but it feels good. Sometimes translations just say ruling. God gives us the world to have, the rest of creation to have dominion over or to rule. The thing that's clear here is that radah is a phrase that is saved and is only used in terms of royalty. And yet, we are meant to be God's image in the world, and these images, these statues, us tiny representations of this Yahweh character, we are given dominion or rule as a royal being over the rest of creation. This isn't me trying to be cute with language and cheer you up and give you a pep talk so we can all get out there and be good little Christians in time for Easter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this is what we are made for. What is already true about us and inviting to live into that identity. The important thing about using royalty language from a culture where the idea of family lineage is passed down, royalty for these people, similar to how we understand royalty, it's in your blood. It's not royal. You're not royal if you act good enough. You're not royal if you earn it. You're just royal. That just is a title that you have because that's what you're born to be. Genesis 1 is using this type of language because God made you this way. People were just made to be these images, these statues of God, a representation of God's physical presence in the world. Using this royal language, it's in the book it says it this way. It's not about whether or not you'll be a ruler in creation. It's about what type of ruler you'll be. I think that's really convicting. Because you're like, oh yeah, that's not me, that's for somebody else. Nope, too bad. Already a ruler. There's not a choice not to be. So you'll either be the type of ruler that rules in creation, that leads in creation, that helps to steward, We'll talk about this later, but God's idea of ruling is a little bit different than our idea of ruling. Remember, God died for us. So we're called to be rulers of creation, but it's not about whether or not we'll finally gain that title when we go to enough church services or do all the classes or show up to Wednesday mornings for a full year in a row or something. Like there's not like a, hey, I don't find you afterwards and hand you your card, give you your tiny crown. Instead, this is, why is the crown tiny? We don't know. But it's not about whether or not this will be true for you someday. You are already that thing. The question is, are you going to be the type that walks in that or not? You can close your eyes and say, well, if I'm good enough, then maybe God will use me in the world someday. No, the way that this language works in the Bible, you're already created to be used by God to advance God's kingdom in the world. You're already one of the ones here to be used by God. It's just a question of whether you'll actually do that or not. I don't say this as any guilt or any pressure. I just know that so many people will come and talk to me and they'll be like, I just want to be used for something great. But I just feel like maybe it's not me. They just want to feel that that's the case for them. And the thing is, guys, you are. The Bible says so. The only difference around whether that's true or not and how your work is used for the kingdom is our decision to act on that. So many things about this first week is about work. We're going to do a couple of weeks on work here in our series, and I know some of you are going, Pastor Chris, I know you're not talking about my job. Work is so much more than our vocation. To quote John Mark Comer, he says, work is, let me find it. Work is so much more than our vocation. It's the groceries, it's cleaning the house, it's the exercising of your body, it's running the errands. Work is showing up in the world and doing what needs to be done. So if you're between work, that doesn't mean you are without ultimate purpose, because it's not just about how we make money. It's kind of like a modern concept, right? Is that we get up and that people, even before kind of our model of society existed, people got up and had to go do things to survive. They didn't have Hy-Vee, but they wish they did. They didn't have Hy-Vee. They didn't have all of these different errands to run. They didn't have to return something to the store that somebody bought that didn't fit or whatever. They didn't have these different things to do, but they did have stuff that they had to go to make their society and their life function. All of that is work. So whether you're showing up for your spouse, you're showing up for your significant other, you're showing up for your family, you're going to do the things that need to be done, you're cleaning the house, all of that is work. And all of that is usable by God to bring God's kingdom here if we're going to let it happen. Because we're the only thing in creation that operates this way. And God is looking for us to represent God's love and grace and presence in the world because of it. The goal of what we're talking about is integration. It's the fancy seminary word where essentially, let me ask it this way. Do the things that you believe show up in the ways that you live your life? That's what integration is. When our beliefs and our actions are one thing, then that's living an integrated life. None of us will live a perfectly integrated life. You're like, yes, I believe it is important not to get angry with people, and then somebody cuts you off and you say all your favorite 4-letter words. You're like, oh, well, there's a little bit of a gap there between my integration, or there's a break in my integration because there's a gap between the application of my faith and what I claim to believe. But living an integrated life is the important thing, and this is so often the challenge in work, is this idea that we all want to be used by God. We all want to show up. And then somebody sends that email, and you're like, how dare you? But the goal is integration, is having our faith be so central to who we are and how we see ourselves and other people, that truth is the lens by which we see the rest of our lives. Everything outside of this building as well. Comer points out that God could have continued to make people out of dust right? The first person was made out of dust, but God goes, all right, now you do it. God is looking for a partner in creation. And as we seek to be those partners, that's what integration allows us to do. We get to be partners with the mission that God gave us to be. God says, all right, now you do it. That might make you feel uncomfortable. You're like, well, see, this is the problem with hope. You're trying to say we're equal with God? No, not even close. Are you saying that we're supposed to be we have some sort of God potential? Definitely not. You saying God needs us somehow? Not even a little. But God still wants us to help. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Until you look at it through the eyes of a father. And sometimes the father metaphor is overused in some church settings, because I know not everybody has kids here, and I respect that. And I'm not saying you have to be a father to know the love of God. What I am saying is that in this metaphor, it applies. This is my son. It is the same kid. One picture is not enough. I love this kid so much. There's a story that happened. My son is in the stage of things where he is like 1.5. His name's Micah. And Micah loves to, if something is inside something else, he likes to take it out. And then, plot twist, he puts it back in. But then takes it out again. This happens sometimes for minutes on end. And then he goes to find something else. However, it is never the thing you want to happen. It's always the stuff that needs to stay in the thing. Like all of the Cheerios. No. You misheard me. I feel like you heard me and you're like, oh, a lot of the Cheerios. No. All of the Cheerios. Okay. The dog had a great day. So this a couple weeks ago, on Fridays, it's my day off. It's my Sabbath day. And unless there's a chili cook-off, 6 p.m. this Friday. But Fridays are generally my day off. Micah is not at school, or as Joanna, my 6-year-old, calls it baby school here at Hope. He is not at baby school. And so Micah is home with me. And Micah and I are just chilling. We do dishes. We go to the grocery store. We run errands together. It's my little tiny buddy. And occasionally this tiny buddy now can move, which is terrifying because he's so fast. And so I was putting away some clothes and going to different closets, doing the different thing. I'm like, uh-oh, where did he go? And so I walk over and he's in the bathroom. I can hear something rustling around. And I come back out and he has dumped the little flossers. We have like a Costco bag size of flossers. All of the flossers are on the floor. And he looks at me like, can you believe this? And I said, oh, buddy. And then he takes one up in his tiny little pudgy baby hands, and he puts it back in. And he looks at me. And I said, yeah, buddy, that's right. And I said, do you think that you and me could put all these back in the bag? And he's like, and he does it. And then he does it with 2 hands, like he did 2 at one time, and then looked at me like, I have figured it out. It's magic. And I was like, yeah, buddy. And I was celebrating with him. I was like, that's a great job. Do you know what would have been faster? Put him elsewhere, and then I just pick up all the things super fast. But I love that kid so much. It was so infinitely better to me to be able to do this thing with him. Like his first chore, given he did cause the problem. But I feel like that's just parenthood. Kids are cleaning up the problems that they caused. But my point is, I wonder if that's a little bit of how God looks at us. Like, why would God need a partner? It's not because we're expected. A lot of us have been taught that to straighten up and act right, well, that's because God wants us to prove that we can spend eternity with him. I think it's that God sees us and goes, man, I love you so much. It would be so much better if we do this together. Those gifts, those talents, those abilities, those passions, those interests, those things that you have in your life, you get to use those things to accomplish the will of God. Because God says, what if we did it together? Yeah, you do it too. It's a sign of affinity. It's not a test. It's not some sort of challenge. It's God seeing the mess we've made. Saying, oh, buddy, let's fix it together. Let's do this together. I wonder if we see our work that way, if all of a sudden we hold it a little bit differently. One, knowing we're not alone in our work, no matter what your work is, and no matter how you spend your days, because it's more than vocation. But I wonder if we look at the things in our hands and we say, oh, this is a little bit different than I thought, because my loving Father is there for me, inviting me to do it with him. That's a big honor. It's a whole lot of fun. And we feel really, really loved on the other part of it. That's our good Father, and our work matters. We're going to be exploring work the next couple of weeks, and then we will be talking about rest and then the world that kind of balance of work and rest, what that gives to the world and the kingdom that it creates, and we'll get to that right before Easter. Our discussion questions are as follows. What is your emotional relationship to your work? Is it excitement? Is it dread? Again, maybe you really love your office job, but you like, anytime you think about like a day of chores at the house, it like makes your skin crawl or something. Maybe you love your being at home and you love all that stuff, home improvement. You're like, I can fix anything except the problems at work, at my job, right? What is your relationship to that? Is it a necessary evil? I'm not shaming you. All of us view the different things, ways that we spend our time in some of these ways, but just in light of what we've talked about, if you're honest, what is that for you? Have you ever connected your spiritual life to your work life? Another thing that I did mention in this book, it talks about there is no difference. Everything you do is spiritual. There is no sacred secular divide. You live your life that God made for you. You're like, well, it's my secular life now. See you later, God. And God's like, what are you talking about? I'm following you everywhere you go. You can't go anywhere that God's not. So have you ever connected this truth of your spiritual life, this ultimate truth about reality, to the way that you spend your time? I don't mean this in a cheap sense of evangelism of like, so invite them to the chili cook-off. You should. But my point is have you ever noticed that the things that you do matter much more than the company bottom line? And where can you invite God into the work, any type of work that you do this week? And how does that change how you do it? That'll be our guiding practical question for this series. So consider that. Consider those questions. Discuss it in your group. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. We will see you at noon or 6 p.m. today for Ash Wednesday. Grace and peace, friends. Go be good to each other, and we'll see you next week.